Hey everybody, it's Dr. LaDonna Raeh with WVON 1690, and I am in the heart of Gary, Indiana, right here on Broadway, where I noticed that the grid is back up according to the traffic lights and the long lines at White Castle. I am sitting here next to former mayor and Chicago Urban League president, Karen Freeman-Wilson. Welcome.
Thank you, Dr. LaDonna, and thank you for being over here to just uplift the challenges that folks are experiencing in Gary, Indiana. People know that, yes, my heart is in Chicago, but I keep one foot on each side of the border. And so my heart and home, because my husband is here, are in Gary, Indiana. And so there are some challenges, and it has not been as widely covered. Let me first say that I'm the president of Chicago Urban League. I do have a counterpart that I've been in touch with routinely, and that is Dr. Vanessa Allen McLeod, who is working hard, working with the administration. And I know that the mayor has been working hard. He's talking to the governor. The mayor has declared an emergency in accordance with his power, disaster emergency. Of course, the governor has that ability, and the federal government has that ability as well. And I have to think that they are.
I'm on Fifth Avenue.
They can't be assessing, because anybody who sees this knows that it is worthy of both a state and federal emergency.
The situation, well, actually, we're sitting in a parking lot right now across the street from a long, lengthy line of people just trying to get food. How would you have governed this situation?
Well, I think the mayor is doing exactly what I would have done. One, assessment. Two, assuring that residents are safe, and trying to get as many folks clear from their homes, because there were a lot of blocked entrances to homes, and there remain. 3, call in the National Guard, call in as much help. I know that they're doing some emergency feedings at schools, at the YWCA, which is around the corner from here on 15th, and Adams and Gary. And so, one of the things that having been in office, you never second guess, because you know that there are a lot of things that people don't know. I think that the place that it's important for community and those who may not be as impacted by this to come in at is to support those relief efforts around food, around just helping residents to get the things that they may need, transportation, those who are most vulnerable to get generators or access to generators. And that's where I'm trying to step in with some of the civic organizations, the D9, the Links, the Masons, the Eastern Star, those organizations that have the ability. They may be impacted, but they may not be as affected by the impact that has affected everyone else.
I can appreciate that. And of course, those looking at home or watching this video, they feel like that's them over there, okay?
Yeah.
But this is all of us. And is there a collaborative effort, not just for the organizations like the Masons, the Eastern Stars, but let's say the Urban League and the NAACP and so on and so forth? Your thoughts?
Yep, we're all working together. In fact, there's a call today that's being spearheaded by the NAACP to talk through what can be done. People are thinking pop-up cookouts so that people can eat, because we know eating is an issue. And while they're feeding at the YWCA, there are other places in the city where people might not be able to get to the Y. So trying to do pop-ups using food that will either spoil or that needs to be cooked. And so we're asking churches that may have food stored or other entities that may have food stored to let people know so that we can cook that up and offer that to residents. But that plan should be in place after this call today at 1:30. And anybody who might have water to offer, who might want to bring charcoal over, we'll be posting. There is already, and I put it on my page earlier this morning, a dry ice initiative where Christ United Methodist Church Save Our Community is doing that. So they're taking the name of folks who need dry ice so that that can either be picked up or delivered. So if you have transportation, go to Christ United Methodist Church to get this dry ice, because it'll last a couple of days in a cooler and a freezer. That will help to freeze medicine, will help to freeze those things, formula, other things that people need to freeze.
I don't think we think about the impact of medication, formula, things that are so essential to so many residents. And then it brings me to my next question. On Wednesday, there had not been a single piece of coverage of what was going on in Gary. As you Googled it, nothing showed up. However, when calling the hospital, I called Methodist Hospital. They mentioned that they had no power. That power came back up the next day, but how were those patients, if you have any information on how those patients suffered, or how were they impacted? Because I'm thinking about ICU, emergency room,
Sure.
people who are on electronic dependent devices, oxygen, things of that nature.
Well, the good thing about the hospital is that they do have generators, but I know that their concern was that they would run out of that source of power, but they were able to get up and running. So they spent a kind of touchy 24 hours trying to figure out when we would get up and running. And I do know from NIPSCO that all hospitals in the area, and it didn't just impact Gary, but Gary had the largest number of people offline, because if you think about it, Gary has the oldest infrastructure. It's the oldest city. And so as the oldest city in the area, or one of the oldest cities and the largest, then you have the greatest impact.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever been flooded? I just have to. Have you ever been in this situation before?
I have been in this situation, but what I will tell you is that there has not been, at least in my lifetime, and I'm 65, a tornado that has had this level of impact across the city. Mm-hmm. So this is unique. I mean, we all went through the drills as kids. We all know what you're to do theoretically, but this is the first time that we've had to do it. Go to the basements and then come upstairs and see all of the trees, not just down, but uprooted, like mature trees uprooted, to see power lines widely down throughout the city. And that's the thing that is impacting all of us in a way that we've never seen before.
What does it mean to have such a young mayor that may not have such a dense Rolodex as yours?
Well, what I will say is that the mayor does have a Rolodex, and he has some folks on line. Yesterday, the mayor of Chicago and I were presenting to
Brandon Johnson.
Mayor Johnson and I were presenting along with Jim Reynolds to investors, and Mayor Johnson mentioned that he had been talking to Mayor Melton. So don't underestimate Mayor Melton's ability. He does have an extensive Rolodex. I know that people want to be helpful, and that he has been accessing that Rolodex. But I also know that when things like this happen, and it's not anybody's fault, but they also think it's the mayor's responsibility. Everything stops with the mayor. And so I would say to residents that they have to be patient. And I know that's hard to do that when you don't have power, when you
Or patience.
don't have patience. But that's the only way things can get done.
Now, what types of resources are made available in Indiana from what you remember? Are they equitably distributed based on the heavy African American population?
Well, what I'll say is when I was talking to folks yesterday, there were people all over, African American, white, Latino, who were experiencing power outages up to and including former leadership at the power company and current leadership at the power company. So this has been an equal opportunity outage. I think that what we've seen, though, is that the infrastructure in our city is old. That is the utility infrastructure. And so that makes you more vulnerable. What I also know is that when you are in a community with a high poverty rate, like Gary has, then it makes it harder to recover from emergencies like this.
But billions have been spent on emergency preparedness. Where did that money go?
Well, it doesn't always come to communities. Emergency preparedness comes to places where grants are given, right? So billions have been spent on emergency preparedness, but that's at the federal level. So, and sometimes at the state level. So now we have to have it come down to the city level. And that's what I'm hoping we'll see in the next few days.
Hence the state of emergency.
Hence getting the governor to call a state of emergency, because if the governor calls it, then he has the resources. Indiana has a surplus.
Yeah. What is he saying? What is the governor saying?
Well, the governor's been up. I don't talk to the governor. And that's, I think, what we can hear from the mayor, because I know that he has spoken with the governor multiple times.
I love it. I thank you for giving us an update on what to expect. But what is, this sounds like a NIPSCO issue as well. If you have old infrastructure and NIPSCO is still sending out those invoices, those bills to each and every resident, to each and every commercial owned property, what are they doing to make sure that this doesn't happen again? Have they given some updates to update the infrastructure or look for funding? What are the plans? Because the weather's only going to keep getting worse.
So what I am aware that NIPSCO has been updating infrastructure, for instance, down on what we refer to as the low end of the city. There was a full update. But when you look at the level of this outage, you know that updates to infrastructure really didn't protect folks from outages, because there were power stations, there were utility lines that were literally down. So it wasn't like you just had one situation to blow and they were able to keep everything else online. You had whole cities that have been out. I think that, it's hard to say what should be done to the infrastructure in the midst of this, but I think that's a really important conversation to have with leadership at NIPSCO, for the city leadership to have, to say, okay, now that we've seen what has happened, what are those things that we can do to protect those most vulnerable to situations like this?
What do you say to the residents of Gary and parts of Indiana that have been affected by this storm? How do you want them, or would you like to advise that they weather the storm until this is over?
Well, I would say, think about the YWCA on 15th Avenue as a source of emergency assistance that may be needed. I would also say to those residents who have not been as impacted that it's important that you extend yourself to your neighbor. I would also say that if you are a member of one of the organizations, NAACP, the Urban League here in Northwest Indiana, the D9 in Northwest Indiana, now's the time for us to show up in large numbers, the links of Northern Indiana. Yes, we've been impacted, but we've not been as affected. It's one thing to be impacted, it's another to be affected. And so we have to understand, because it's easy for us to say, well, my lights are out too. But that's not it. It's really being able to survive the effect of a storm. That's where we have to come in to help residents in a wide way. And if you need medication refrigerated, go to Christ United Methodist on Ridge Road and Adams Street, because they have dry ice. And that's going to be a game changer for people who need to refrigerate medicine and formula and other things that they may not be able to refrigerate in their freezers.
Chicago Urban League President Karen Freeman-Wilson, thank you so much for this interview. As we get updates, guys, we're going to bring you updates and make sure that you are informed. But don't just listen, watch, and witness. Make sure that you get involved. And how can people get involved that are watching from around the city, the world, the connecting states, you name it?
Well, I would tell them to keep an eye on the city's Facebook page. I would also tell them to keep an eye on the NAACP, the Urban League of Northwest Indiana. Will likely post it on our page, the Chicago Urban League, but I'm going to also post it on my personal page, which is still Karen About Gary, ironically.
Is it you said Karen
about Gary? Yep.
Well, I don't think I paid attention. I know I'm on your page. I didn't pay attention. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
You truly love Gary. Thank you so much for giving this opportunity for us to get in gear and, remove the Democrat, Republican, state lines. None of that matters, okay? We're talking about people right now.
Emergency. And then, I would be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to my son-in-law, Councilman Kenneth Wissington, who has been going from house to house cutting down trees. So he has had his chainsaw operating for the last 2.5 days.
So he's out there with the National Guard, because that looks like what they're doing right now too.
He's out there with the National Guard and with Matt from the Tiny's on Lake Street. They've been out really going from house to house, doing as much as they can.
Nice. Thank you very much. Dr. LaDonna Raeh signing off right here in Gary, Indiana on Broadway Street. Bye-bye for now.